Hello, everyone, and welcome back to 1IQ Sports Talk. Sterling here, coming at you with a quick rundown and review of our Week 1 Pittsburgh Steelers matchup against the Atlanta Falcons. Uh, Overall, first up, I'd like to start out with a win is a win. It was good. We got that W. Final score was 18 to 10 against Atlanta. Um, After that, let's jump into the issue, and that is the same thing it's been all season, and that's quarterback. We didn't know who the quarterback was coming into the preseason or anything. They named Russell Wilson the starter, and here we are, week 1, and that calf injury flares up on him, and all of a sudden, Justin Fields is starting week 1 for us. A game day decision, which it makes for more of a mess on this offense. That being said, he didn't have a terrible day. He didn't have a great day either, though. He went 17 for 23, 156 passing yards, which is not great. But he didn't turn the ball over. So, no touchdowns, no turnovers. It's give and take there. He did rush the ball for 57 yards as well throughout the game. So, over 200 yards total, which is promising to see for the future. The start of this game was rough to watch, though. I mean, there was a lot of, I don't know if it was miscommunication or just not enough practice together, but Zach Frazier and Justin Fields were having trouble with the snap to start this game, and there were a couple of really botched, fumbly, transitions there, and one that actually hit the dirt and was a fumble. Luckily, Justin Fields was able to recover that. They seemed to settle down as we got into the second quarter and then very much into the second half. This offense really calmed down in the second half, and they started playing more confident and, understanding that they could rely on their defense to bail them out of everything, which, this Pittsburgh Steelers defense was able to do. They also were a little bit slow in the first quarter to start out, allowing the Falcons to drive the ball down really quickly on that first drive and kick a field goal, and then they also allowed them to get another touchdown there in the first half. After that, that defense just shut the door, though, so that was good to see. Back to the offense. It's that quarterback and wide receiver passing game issue that is likely going to haunt us all season long at this point. 156 yards passing is not going to get it done in this league. You're not going to get very far. So we need to see improvement, whether it's Justin Fields or whether Russell Wilson ends up back in there as the starter once his calf heals up. I don't know what the coaching staff plans to do. This is almost like a worst case scenario. If Justin Fields had been able to come out here and just wow everybody, then it's an easy decision to just ride with him. With this lackluster play, now all of a sudden you've got that controversy again of, okay, so do we put Russell Wilson in? Do we keep running with Fields and hope for improvement? It feels like a lose-lose situation. And I don't envy the coaching staff having to make these decisions, because it is not going to be easy to do for them going forward. For the receiving game, nobody really stepped up like we wanted to see in that, for that wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 spot. Throughout the game, Justin Fields was able to move the ball around to 8 different receivers. We saw 8 different guys catching it. The bulk of that went to George Pickens and Pat Freiermuth. George Pickens with 6 receptions for 85 yards, and Pat Freiermuth got 4 receptions for only 27 yards. The rest, it was sort of, I think 2 receptions for Jaylen Warren and 1 for everybody else who managed to grab one. So that is still a big concern. They need to figure out something for a wide receiver too, because Pickens and Freiermuth aren't going to be able to do it all themselves, especially if, this Arthur Smith offense, if he keeps calling it in such a timid, apprehensive way where he's, they're playing the safe game, which I understand you don't want to turn the ball over when you've got a good defense like this, but you also have to have the ability to be very explosive in this league. You have to take advantage and you need to be able to throw the ball downfield. I was looking at a graphic of Justin Fields passing, and unfortunately, it looked a lot like all the quarterbacks we ran through last year, where it was everything outside the hash marks and no passes over the middle of the field. And that, again, I said it all year last year, that has to change. You have to be willing to throw that ball over the middle of the field. If you're only throwing to the sidelines, you are not going to succeed in this league. You need to be able to use the entire field for this passing game. And so that is something I hope Arthur Smith is able to work into this offense, because as it stands, this passing game is not going to get it done. And, the downside is that hinders this rush game, which has the potential to be really good. And we saw some flashes of it, like we got Mr. Angry Runs, Najee Harris, who just goes off regularly, gets some big runs in there. We saw a few big ones again this Sunday. He had 20 total carries for only 70 yards, which I know I say only 70 yards, but I like to see when he can push over 100. It's pretty consistent. When he gets over 100 yards, this team will win the game. And so across everybody, it wasn't quite 150 yards. We saw, as I mentioned, Justin Fields rushed for 57 yards as well. I mentioned Najee Harris there with his 70. Jaylen Warren only had 2 carries this game for 7 yards, which was a little strange to see, but he did add 2 receptions to that for 13 yards. But again, that's a little strange for even Jaylen Warren, because we saw him get a lot of touches and yards last year. I was a little surprised, honestly, to see Cordarrelle Patterson in there a little more often. He carried the ball 4 times, and he was often in there, I noticed, on some of the third down calls, which I didn't quite understand. We brought him in primarily as a kick returner. It's good to have an extra running back as well, but when you've got Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren, they really should be out there for the bulk of those third down plays. I don't know why you would be running it with Patterson instead, but hey, week 1, I'm sure they're trying to experiment with some things, so we'll see what happens going forward. There was also one very awkward, trick end around play they tried to run with George Pickens that went for minus 10 yards. That was ugly. I hope we don't see too much more of that. That looked like it maybe got snuck in there from Matt Canada's playbook. So let's just do away with that, because that was not very good at all. So I mean, for this offense, the bright spots, George Pickens made some big catches, when Justin Fields was willing to air the ball out to him, so that was good to see. I hope we see some more of that going forward. I really want to see them keep utilizing Najee Harris the way they have been. Like I said, if we can get Najee Harris up over 100 yards and we can find a way to score some touchdowns, not a lot, just 1 or 2 a game, honestly, and this team is good enough to win a lot of games just like that, because, this week, Chris Boswell was the star of this game. He went 6 for 6 kicking field goals, with his longest being 57 yards. He added 2 more of over 50 yards, 2 other kicks that were over 40 yards, and 1 shorter kick in there. But going 6 for 6 like that, very clutch. He scored all the points for this Steelers offense, and that's sort of my point. Like, if we can have him kicking 2 or 3 or 4 field goals a game, with the offense being able to score 1 touchdown or 2 touchdowns, that in itself is going to be enough points that this defense will be able to hold most teams and will win a lot of games. They just got to figure out a way to turn some of these 3 points into 6. We aren't going to be able to go the whole season just relying on Boswell's leg. Unfortunately, we got to see a little bit of Cameron Johnston in there, with a few punts. I think he got 2 in, and they were good punts. After seeing Presley Harvin the last couple of years, it was nice being able to stretch that field out and get some better field position. But unfortunately, that ended when he suffered a pretty awful injury to his kicking leg on one of those punts, and somehow it ended up with a Pittsburgh Steelers penalty, and there was no even hint of a roughing the kicker or running into the kicker or any sort of penalty against Atlanta on that, and that was really disappointing to see. Just bogus to me, you take a kicker out, there should be a flag thrown. So as of now, Johnson has been placed on season-ending IR and will undergo surgery. So best wishes to him on a speedy recovery. I hope he gets well and is able to get back on the field for next season. Um, you know, it, it's moving forward now. The Steelers have signed another punter. I didn't see who it was, but I'll look into that as the week progresses. I'm hoping we score more touchdowns and don't have to be punting the ball as much. So outside of Chris Boswell, though, this defense, man, going into this season, this defense was already touted to be one of the best in the league. And after those early game jitters where it almost seemed like they were feeling out this Falcons offense, they locked in and they started to shut this team down. They only managed to get 2 sacks on Kirk Cousins, which was surprising. I thought they would have a few more than that. One of them coming from Montravius Adams and another one from the usual culprit TJ Watt to end the game. TJ also had 2 strip sacks throughout the course of this game. Both were negated by penalties, unfortunately. One of them, it was an interference call on a cornerback, so I understand that. But the other one, they called TJ Watt offsides, and I've watched that play over and over again, and man, he timed that snap perfectly. He was moving at the same time that ball was moving back, so I don't think that was a proper call. That should have been a strip sack for TJ Watt at that point, but it is what it is. Watt also did manage to recover a key fumble in that game, so he still managed to get a turnover over to our side, which was good to see. And it helped because the Steelers won that turnover battle in dominant fashion, as they often do. As I mentioned earlier, we did not turn the ball over on offense, which was very good to see, even with the minimal yards. And the defense was able to get 3 turnovers themselves. That fumble that I mentioned, and then we got to see 2 interceptions, both of them by 2 of the new members of this Pittsburgh Steelers secondary in Deshaun Elliott, who got his first pick in the first quarter, and then we got Dante Jackson, who came over in that trade with the Panthers for Deontay Johnson. He managed to get his first pick with just under 3 minutes left in the game, which really sealed it, gave good field position, and we were able to move in, get that last field goal, push the lead to 8 points, and that solidified it at that point. Once we were up to 18-10 with less than 3 minutes, there was very little hope for the Falcons to come back against a defense this good. I have seen a lot of people, complaining, stating that, oh, what did we pay for Patrick Queen for? Why is Patrick Queen here? What is he doing? Because he didn't really show up on the stat line much this week. He had 2 total tackles, which, okay, if you're basing it purely on stats, then sure, he didn't do great. But what I would say is look at his presence just in the middle of the field, and the last few seasons, just him being there made it so much easier for this team, this defense, to shut teams down on those 3rd and medium, 3rd and long plays, where in years past, we were seeing a lot of cases where we had a team on the ropes on 3rd down, and they were able to throw it over the middle of the field and convert that 3rd down to a 1st down. With Patrick Queen being there, yeah, maybe he's not going to get as many tackles right away in this season as people are hoping, but his presence was making it more difficult for Kirk Cousins to find an open receiver, which allowed the pressure to get to him, allowed him to make mistakes, which, batted passes, incomplete passes, and ultimately 4th downs, which we can then, get the ball back from a punt. So with 1 game only in there, I am not at all concerned with the lack of stats that we're seeing from Patrick Queen. A lot of the run game that we saw from Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier in the little bit we saw, a lot of it was outside. They weren't running up the middle a whole lot, and I think that's because they know we have a strong D line and Patrick Queen in behind that. And so a lot of that was to the outside, and by the time Patrick Queen gets there, a couple guys already have arms around the runner or the receiver or whoever it is. So I'm not too concerned about that myself. I think going forward, he's going to get more comfortable in this defense. He's going to be much more dominant, and we're going to see a lot more of him on the stat sheets as this season progresses. So, overall, week one, it's hard to put a stamp on a season after only 1 week, until you get to about week 4 to 6. That's when you really see what a team is going to be and what this team is going to be made of. And so week one, there was some positives. Like I said, we didn't turn the ball over at all. The defense was able to clamp down on the opposing team. The run game was pretty solid. The bads, it's, like I said at the start of this, 156 yards passing is not going to cut it. We got to be able to push that number up over 200, and more importantly than that, we got to be able to score some touchdowns on offense. We watched so much of last season where we just could not score on offense, and the defense was scoring points and winning us games. We need this season to go differently. We need to find a way to get that ball in the end zone, whether it's Justin Fields or Russell Wilson. I don't care at this point. We need to get some passing touchdowns, some rushing touchdowns. Like, I don't just want to watch field goals all season again and pray that the defense gets turnovers so we can win. Next week, going up to Mile High, facing Denver. Bo Nix had himself a rough week in week one. And so I'm hoping that this Steelers defense is watching that game tape and going, okay, we managed to pick up Kirk Cousins twice. Let's go in there and see how many we can take away from Bo Nix. So hopefully Arthur Smith can figure his shit out, get something turned around here so we can score some touchdowns on offense next week. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what this defense does against this Denver Broncos offense in week 2. But that's all I've got for today. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button, hit subscribe so you get all the notifications for our weekly podcast and all of these new videos that we're doing here as well. Other than that, I'd like to thank you for being here, and we'll see you all next time. Peace.